Hello, everybody. Welcome to what number is this? The fourth amazing installment of the Web3 TEA live stream. Only on YouTube. That's the only place you can see it. We have an amazing lineup, a lot of stuff to talk about today. There's only 8 people watching right now, so we're going to try to get a couple more people in here and we'll get going. Um, Very excited to be here. I'll introduce Rolf first, I guess, and I'll introduce him in the way I see Rolf, which is going to tie into some of the questions that I have baked up for him. Um, you know, Rolf is from a company named NUMOMO, and I know it's not the only thing you do, but the thing that we are associated with you primarily on is NUMOMO. NUMOMO is South Korea Based NFT creative studio, and they are the company and the people who have done a really good job and an awesome job taking
Yep.
our initial NFT concept from a really rough idea into something that really makes a lot of sense and is a cool NFT project on its own, not just it's not a turf. What is it called? AstroTurf, right? This is not an AstroTurf NFT project, in my opinion. Um,
Mhm.
so what I think about Rolf is over the course of the last 6 months we've known each other. Every time I talk to this guy, he is in a different country or a different continent, right? He is right now he is in the Singapore airport doing this webinar. He's on his way to Seoul, Korea. I've talked to him in Switzerland, I've talked to him in Amsterdam, I've talked to him in London, I've talked to him in New York. I met him in New York City. We went to a cool VanEck party. So this guy encapsulates the idea of a citizen of the world, which I am not.
Yeah.
Me and Bartlett were talking. Me and Bartlett are both from Tampa St. Pete area. I'm not a citizen. I mean, I've been around the world a little bit, but I'm not a truly global citizen.
Yeah.
So, Rolf, does that kind of description of you sync up with how you see yourself?
Yeah, it's just like eternally homeless, but that's less glorious way. Citizen of the world definitely sounds a lot better.
Digital nomad too is one of those words that was kicking around in the last 10 years, right? Where it's like you don't need to work a job, you just need your laptop and a place to stay, and you can get your work done and make money and live your life the way you want. Is that what you do?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. The reason why I don't like the word digital nomad is precisely because of the association that it's defined against the idea of working in a specific place. So the reason why I move around is not just for fun. It's because like there's places I wanted to work at and there's people I need to meet. And it's just the nature of work that has changed to become much more global, and especially within crypto to be like extremely distributed, not just in the technical sense, but in the geographic sense as well.
That what you just said feeds into further questions I have for you baked up, which was that like you work primarily exclusively in Web3 now, right? Like this is what you do. Do you see a direct
That's right.
link between the ethos that is defined or that defines Web3 decentralized stuff like that to a global borderless mindset?
Oh, absolutely. I think it goes hand in hand. One of the reasons why is that initially, if you think of the internet, one of the main protocols was SMTP, so email basically. People were sending emails, and the main way they thought emails were cool was because you could create an email that had a pseudonymous identity, meaning it didn't have to be rolf@gmail.com. It was like abc.birddog at gmail.com, right? And you could do all kinds of things with that. You could also do like pseudonymous identities on forums, and then you could like write blog posts. And it was very much this idea of like, I can be anything. And that was basically Web 2. Web 3 is moving away from I can be anything to we can be anything. You don't know how the other person looks. You don't know what they're like, but they're defined by this common kind of culture that revolves around some kind of idea. You may or may not like the idea. It doesn't have to be decentralized money, which I don't think that many people find exciting, but it may be something like NFTs, which more people tend to find exciting, right? And so people are moving from an I can be anyone ideal to a we can be anyone ideal. And I think that's pretty interesting.
And Rolf, could we back up a bit? So we finally got to meet in person at the VanEck Crypto de Mayo event, which was awesome. And I got to hear you sort of give your background story to a few different folks there. And so maybe like where it started, would just love to have the audience hear your background and story.
Sure. So basically Colombian mother, German father, grew up in Paris, France, then studied in the US, graduated top of my class in entrepreneurship, also studied, did a BA in theater, and then a year later started my PhD. So skipped the whole master's thingy, and that was in 2011. And so there's an interesting story of how I fell upon Bitcoin in 2011. Back when I was an undergraduate, I used to download the software called SETI, SETI, which stood for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Literally a website, you can download the software, you click a button, install something on your desktop, you double click, and then you have the software running. What did it do? Well, it was searching for extraterrestrial intelligence. Sounds really fancy. It was a program out of Berkeley. And what it did, it took space, divided it up into small packets of information, and said, space is so big that the computers at Berkeley University are not big enough to process all of space. So how can we create a software that allows anyone to provide their spare computing resources, i.e. your computer when you're not using it, to basically help us analyze the stuff that's in space? And I was like, oh my God, so if I find a planet, it's going to be called the Rolf planet, right? And then I was like running the software on my computer as an undergrad while I was sleeping. And then I thought it was a great idea until my laptop literally blew up, right? And then I had to buy a new laptop. And I was like, this is a really terrible idea because I didn't have much money back then. And I was like, I'm not going to use SETI ever again. 2011, my first year of my PhD, a friend of mine comes down the hallway and says, Rolf, there's this software you can download to support a decentralized global system of money called Bitcoin. I was like, man, I've heard something like this before, right? It's like the SETI thing. It's like, no. For the first time, you actually get paid. So when you support it, i.e. you mine it, you get paid Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, and sometimes you wish you hadn't learned, because anticipating that my computer would blow up, I sold most of my Bitcoin, right? So mistakes were made.
For 50 cents a Bitcoin?
Nothing, whatever, right? So that's how I got into Bitcoin in 2011. I was at a school called INSEAD, which is a business school. Graduated 2016-17 with a dissertation that explained how organizations with tokens are different from organizations without tokens. So really, what's the point of a token? Not in terms of money, but how can a token supercharge an organization? Today, in the mot du jour, as we would say in French, it's community. How do communities get supercharged with tokens? That's what I'm fascinated by. I love DAOs, I love organizations. And also short, I graduated with my PhD, so I actually did finish it. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
You did or didn't? So that means you did finish it, which is bad for you in Web3 because you have a PhD.
It's bad. It's probably bad.
Lost a lot of street cred.
I do. And then did 2-3 startups, did a bunch of DAO stuff, and now I run NUMOMO, creative NFT studio. I run a staking platform. I have a small venture capital firm that invests in that believes the end game of crypto is DAOs, which is internative organizations, right? Kind of what email did to paper mail is what DAOs are going to do to organizations. And I think that's some really powerful stuff. So that's me.
One thing that really, when we met in New York, I asked you what's your PhD in, right? So what did you actually get a PhD in, and why does that tie directly into crypto?
Yeah, great question. So technically what's on my PhD diploma is a PhD in management. Management as an academic discipline can be divided into 4 different subsets. One's called economics, the other one's political science, the third one is sociology, and the fourth one is social psych. The one thing that ties all of them together is a thing called organizational theory. In other words, it says, well, so many people around us are involved with organizations. Why do organizations matter? How do they influence our lives? And, because it was a business school, how do organizations matter? And how organizations are structured? How does it matter for making money? Right? So like diversification, de-diversification, things like informal structures within organizations versus formal structures, i.e. titles, et cetera, et cetera. So if I had to talk to anyone in academia, I would say that I studied organizational theory. But if I have to tell you what's on my PhD, like piece of paper, it says PhD in management.
And so you believe that DAOs are the next iteration of a more efficient, internet native organizational structure for getting projects off the ground, operating, making money if that's what your project wants to do, spreading influence, whatever the goal of your project, and you believe that DAOs are the next iteration of the best kind of organization. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they are necessarily the next iteration, in the sense of they are a new type of organizations that were not possible before. And there are certain areas where these types of organizations are incredibly powerful, but not in all types of situations. It's just like, again, going back to email and paper mail, right? Like once the internet came around, there were things like e-commerce or like internet two-sided marketplaces, Airbnb, Uber, Amazon, eBay, that popped up that weren't really possible before. But that doesn't mean that like a paint company or DuPont is like a terrible company. No, it's an amazing company, right? It just doesn't have that much to do with the internet per se. It's not as internet native as let's say eBay, right? I think the DAOs are like a new type of organizations that will allow people to come together, to put money into a bank account that you can create within seconds, literally within minutes, and to then coordinate some kind of productive collective action. So unfortunately, in 2022, as of right now, crypto has not yet, or a lot of crypto has not yet figured out how these DAOs, i.e. organizations, can produce like real ass products and services. Right now, it's just a DAO for a DAO's sake, and everyone's like, oh my God, I got a DAO, and that should be worth something. But like an organization in and of itself is not worth a lot unless you can produce something that people want to like buy and sell, right? But I think we'll get there. It takes a few cycles, but that's number one, right? Number two, I actually literally believe that what crypto will enable in the end is organizations that are internet native, or organizations that use crypto in a DAO-like way. This is the picture that I'm working backwards from. You have an organization that you can yank up in 5 minutes with a bank account that you can yank up in 5 minutes, and that anyone in the world can join, depending on the parameters you set. Any money, they can be based anywhere, they can be any age, 5 years old, I'm sure you want to do that, or like 55, right? They can be any color, it doesn't matter the degrees. I mean, they can literally just send money, and then you can all together vote on how that money is being dispersed. We can make certain decisions. So when you have this DAO, within the DAO, just like any other organization, there will be a finance department. What the finance department will use is things like DeFi, which I think is great, but that's not the end goal. Like we're not, it's one slice of an organization. We will have a thing that is basically the marketing department, which to me is very close to what we call today community building, right? So some of the work that we've been doing together with, NUMOMO and VanEck is like, how do we build our community, which is this mix between marketing, experiential marketing. How do you make your customers and users part of your organization rather than typically seeing them as something separate from that? So long story short, there's an organization, you will have finance department, marketing departments, customer support departments, etc. And DAOs is where all of this is going. So I think actually a productive way of thinking about the innovation of crypto is to think that we will create a new type of organizations, and working backwards from that, we're building these building blocks right now, from DeFi to NFTs to these other elements.
So we're still early. It sounds like we're still early. There's lots of like little building blocks to be fleshed out, which means there's lots of opportunities for young people and interested people and people who aren't doing this right now. There's white space on the board, right? Sorry to cut you off, Matt. Go for it.
Totally. No, all good. There's just so much innovation taking place in Web3, and just kind of speaking on organizations. Earlier, you and I were on a call, and several companies were brought up. Portals.io, I think, RS11, MetaFactory. I mean, maybe we could talk to some of these. Hopefully we haven't lost them. All right, so Rolf, like Portals, for instance, right? Back in the day, and this is sort of how your colleague Mark put it, back in the day, 2017, Decentraland opens up, just this blank space, nothing's there. It's kind of still that now, although they're fixing it with content. Portals has like maybe a solution of maybe going content first, is my take from that. But could you talk to that one and maybe transition into the other ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So Portals, I think the website is theportals.to or just portals.to. Right now they're based on Solana. What it is the following. It's a website. When you hit the website, you can connect your wallet, or you can click View Demo. There's a little button called View Demo. And then you have basically a 3D space on your computer screen or on your phone screen. And in that 3D space, what is that space? It's a room, like literally like an apartment room, right? And you can basically build that apartment room. You can drop different furnitures. You can choose the color of that furniture. You can like put in a music player. You can put in a TV screen. And so each of these rooms are basically modifiable. The reason why it's interesting for the time, as opposed to before, because it's similar to Second Life and also similar to Decentraland, is that the things you can put inside your room are things that people know you have paid for. That's what was different from before. Because before you would just like use some kind of game and you design things like SimCity and then but there was no skin in the game really. That's like when I visit you guys' homes, what is in your homes will tell me who you are. Portals is taking the fact that crypto enables the internet of value so that when I see what's in your room, I know whether they cost you something or not, which is information that's extremely valuable for me to determine who you are. So if you paid like $1,000 for a Led Zeppelin song, i.e. music NFT in current language, that you're probably a pretty big fan of Led Zeppelin, right? And so the portal is basically this digital room where people display who they are, and you can plug in all kinds of cool things.
And so similar to, I was listening to another podcast recently where they were talking about really influencers utilizing spaces in venues within the metaverse to sort of, they curate it just like they would their Instagram account, right? So if there was a famous celebrity and, this is the product I use and you could see this in my space, it's no different than them just sharing it on Instagram and maybe monetizing that. Is that fair to say? Could you do that with portals?
Yes, you could. In fact, Disclosure Portals is a portfolio company of Culture Capital, Venture Capital Fund and Porta. And Audius, which is basically Spotify or SoundCloud on blockchain, is also a portfolio company. Audius recently got a room in Portals, so they paid for it, and then they designed the room to basically be a link. So when you click the link, you're led to a web page where you can see the Audius room, and then there was a listening party. So you're able to consume the music of Audius in this 3D experience that is Audius specific. This isn't quite the influencer example from like an individual person, but in terms of like a company leveraging portals for marketing purposes.
Can I ask a stupid question? So I'm familiar with Decentraland. Like if you have a Decentraland plot, can you take, like, let's say I don't have any NFTs, but I have a Decentraland plot. I bought a plot. And I like all Bartlett's NFTs. Can I take Bartlett's NFTs and put them in Decentraland and act like they're mine? And you cannot do that in portals? Or do you have to own the actual NFTs that you put up in Decentraland?
Great question. This goes back to a very prevalent and famous confusion in crypto, right? You can copy and paste almost anything on the internet. You can. Like nothing prevents you from doing that. So you can go to Barton's NFTs, you can try to copy and paste them or take screenshots of them and then like put them up in your room. The thing that you will not be able to do is that if I go to your room, JP, and I look at that thing that you copied and pasted and I'm like, prove to me that you are the owner of it, you won't be able to prove that to me in a way that, and I will know that you are not the owner of that.
I'm just going to come after you, JP, so don't even try it. All right, so what? Maybe two more. So when we were at Crypto de Mayo, you were wearing this really cool jacket. I believe a friend of yours is involved in this project at MetaFactory. Could you talk to that for a few moments?
MetaFactory is an amazing project. What it is, it's the following. It is basically a website where you can close. So, for example, a jacket or a sweater, a t-shirt or pants, right? What's really cool about them is two things. Number one, every time you buy something on their website, they give you something back. Why? Because it's you chose to buy with us as opposed to somebody else. So what you get back is actually a token. They call it the robot token. And because the robot token is worth something, it's almost like a discount or like some kind of loyalty reward point, right? What's really cool about MetaFactory is that some of the clothes have NFC chips embedded in them. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you cut out for a sec, but you're good. Keep going. Oh, now you're really cutting out.
So some of these clothes that have the NFC chip inside. So I was wearing a jacket, right? And there was an NFC chip inside. And when I hold my phone, literally just to the NFC chip inside my jacket, there's a little, just like when you point to a QR code, there's a little thing that says like open in your browser. And when you click that, it opens up a web page on my phone that says I can claim an NFT.
Cool.
So what's really cool about this is the following. Imagine I sell 100 VanEck jackets. So people can buy them individually, and it's kind of like, you know, people buying like university sweaters or like the favorite soccer teams or basketball teams like sweaters or whatever. But because you've now embedded a chip in it, you are able to drop over time different NFTs to the people who have that piece of clothing, right? You know, you better make sure that your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you know, doesn't know that that thing is NFT enabled, because otherwise they may claim it before you. But generally speaking, you're able to generate a lot more interactions after the initial one-time purchase of a clothing piece with your customers through this NFC chip. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that ties directly into what I think we're trying to do with the VanEck community NFT, is create a back and forth engagement between the people who own the NFT or hold the NFTs and, you know, the mothership, which is in this case VanEck, right? So we want to be able to say, hey, you know, and we haven't fully revealed what it's going to look like, but, you know, there's going to be a mechanism for people who own that NFT in their wallet to kind of get pinged and get a new update from us, or, you know, get a new invitation or whatever it's going to be. So yeah, that syncs up perfectly with what we're thinking about. What was the last thing you wanted to ask him about, Matt?
RS11. I just thought that was pretty fascinating to maybe share that one. You still hear us, Rolf? Oh.
Yeah, so RS11, again, is a portfolio company of Culture Capital, full disclosure. Yeah. What I think about RS11 is the following. RS11 is basically Zillow for small and medium enterprises. So I'm going to abbreviate small and medium enterprises using the acronym SMEs, right? So it's Zillow for SMEs. What does that mean? You go to a website, and on that website, you're able to basically type in an address of a business, an SME, and then it will zoom into that location of that SME, and it will put a price tag on that SME. Why is that useful, right? First, it's useful because you could literally buy or sell the SME. The second thing that's good for is that SMEs can, through this website, potentially get investments not from a traditional bank, but potentially from their community that is located around them and that really loves that specific SME, right? The third thing that's really, really cool about it is that, imagine, you know, you really love that mom and pop shop around your corner, or that record label shop that's just like, you know, an SME, and you want to support them. You could also tell them, look, if you sign up with RS11, you go on that website, not only do you know how much your business is worth, and that's a number that updates every day, by the way, so you know the health of your business, so to speak, but you know what you could do? You open up at 9 a.m. and then you close at 6 p.m. But you have working capital. If you use that working capital, and from 6 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next day, you lend it out via RS11 to something like Compound Protocol, i.e. you generate yield on a micro level on your working capital, which is basically a new way for SMEs to make money, so to speak, right? It's not huge amounts of money, but it's greater capital efficiency.
It's like overnight lending in crypto.
Yeah, and that's just one idea, right? You could do a lot of other things.
That's interesting.
Where would you get revenue data to price the business on a private enterprise, like a you know, family-owned bakery? How would you?
That was my question. if I have a lawnmower company in New York, and Bartlett's got a lawnmower company in Florida, they're both valued. What are the valuation inputs for that? How many Twitter followers we have? I don't. How does that work? And we're doing it live, baby. He's in the Singapore airport. I can still hear the baby crying, so I think he's still there.
Funny.
Anyway,
that was
the same question. That was the same question I had. Matt, I don't know.
I have a feeling my overhead's going to be a little less than yours in New York versus Florida, but we'll see.
I have a feeling you're also going to have a lot more customers. There's lots of green lawns.
Lots more grass, yeah. Let's see if Rolf can get back on.
Yeah. He says you are cutting off.
Yeah, I'm gonna try this. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, let's just try this. Sorry, I missed the earlier question. Can you say that again?
If we have,
go ahead.
You go, Bartlett. You go.
Okay, where would you get revenue data from for these small businesses so that you could properly, give a valuation on them?
Yeah, so they actually use big data in general, so a whole bunch of different data resources. One of them is triangulation from something like how many cell phones are in the area, how many cell phones walk into the store. They pull data from the POS terminals, right? So these are some of the sources. I'm not sure I can actually tell you all of them, but
those are really good already. I mean, that's excellent. Cool. Rolf, are you going to try to get back on video, or do you want to go through just the voice channel going forward?
Oh, I thought I am on video.
No, your video cut off. Try to turn it back on and see what happens.
Okay, let's try this.
Yes.
Oh. Oh, this is spitting out. You're on your phone now, or are you on your computer? Try to go back on your computer because it looks ridiculous on the stream.
It's fine.
I'll give him more. Let him try it one more time, and if not, we'll keep him distorted, Rolf. TikTok, Rolf.
1 second. Join call on my laptop.
It's live TV, man. Anything can happen.
There we go. What about this? Can you guys see my second?
It's pretty distorted. Pretty distorted.
I'm gonna get out of here.
Yeah, just jump out and jump right back in to the link that I sent you, and it should pop out like on the computer, like what we did the first time. Yeah. Hey Matt, while he's gone, I want to. What do you want to talk about next? Do you want to talk about VanEck NFT?
I think before we, I don't want to move on from Rolf without talking about HackaDAO, and he's got a trivia question for our listeners so that they could win an NFT.
Good, and then I'll ask him my question, and then we'll do the VanEck NFT at the end. How's that?
Okay, that's cool.
We'll keep it going, Rolf. Give him another 15-20 minutes of action. Let me see if I can invite him back in. Hold on.
Yeah, and I don't want to oversell this, but one of the projects that they're working on is tied to this artist, HackaDAO, and there's some generative art involved. The video, I haven't actually seen the video yet, JP. Is this the one where they're in the museum?
Yeah, but it doesn't have the... So that's what it doesn't, it's not third person, but it is cool. All right, hold on. Let's call Rolf here. All right, he's in.
The story of Rolf is back.
Let's do it. Whatever. We'll do it.
So Rolf, why don't you give us some background on the HackaDAO partnership or collaboration?
Flip it sideways, Rolf. It looks a lot better if you do landscape. Yeah, that looks good. If you could just hold that, That would be perfect. Thank you. Sorry. All right.
Sure. HackaDAO?
Yep.
Okay, wait. So anchor me. Where do you want me to start?
Well, I would just love to hear about your collaboration there, and then Look, I was blown away by the whole art and experience, and that's kind of what I wanted JP to share with the audience today. It just seems super unique and special, but maybe just some background on it first.
Okay, so NUMOMO, right, aims to be the premier NFT agency based out of Asia. So what we did is we found one of the best digital media companies that displays in an offline space. Just take like a big room. It projects upon the walls images, right, or moving images. So you go to a room, it's all dark, and projected in front of you on the wall, as well as above you, as well as below you, there's like an ocean crashing. So literally, as you stand there, like waves are crashing through your like feet, right? And it looks real. As you look to the left and right, it looks like an infinity room, like there's no end to it, right? The company that does that is called District. And we were like, oh my God, these immersive spaces are absolutely incredible. What if we could have one of the most well-known or one of the best crypto artists create a digital image with these guys and then display it offline? This is what came to be known as Spirit Forest Incanto. Spirit Forest Incanto is an NFT that is currently being displayed in South Korea in a space where if you, oops, sorry, am I still here?
Yeah, you're here.
If you, the user, you walk inside the room, what happens is that motion sensors pick up that you have entered the room. You look straight ahead, and in front of you on the wall there's a forest, and a deer comes out of the forest because he notices that you just arrived. And as you walk closer to the wall, the deer moves out of the forest closer to you until you reach that wall. And as you reach out with your hand and touch that wall, the deer bends down its head and lets it caress you. Lets you caress its head, right? And so for the first time, we got, and first of all, I think it's absolutely beautiful. But second of all, this idea of taking NFTs offline to provide a real immersive experiential experience is something that, at least in my knowledge, hasn't been done before. And that's something that I think we might be able to show some of the viewers here, right?
Oh, hold on. I didn't. Hold on. Gotta switch screens here. All right, here we go. Ready? And the desktop audio is going to create an echo if you guys talk. So here we go. We'll play it and then we'll talk about it. So to me, so what that's a really cool. It's really quick, right? Like, really quick display of what this idea is, and what that video doesn't really give you. So it's a really cool deer. It's beautiful, right? But the experience, and probably should have found the other video where you're walking into this room with 50-foot high ceilings, and this deer realizes that you're there, and then looks at you, and then you can interact with it in ways that I've never seen before. And there's another thing that you showed me. Was with the med art or the other thing where it's like
the children's
art meta.
Yeah.
You walk into the museum, you draw a picture. You draw a picture of a fox. You draw a picture of a jelly bean or whatever it is, and you scan it into this machine, and then your picture that you just drew with crayons or whatever is on the wall, moving around, animated, and interacting with other things like on this wall. And those installations have been primarily in South Korea. Is that correct? So that
is correct.
So that brings me to one of the things I really wanted to ask you and get you to talk about is, it seems to me like different people are getting into Web3 in different ways. And I think South Korea I would categorize them as a little bit further beyond applications than we are. Stuff like that. right? So what are some of the differences, like from, as a citizen of the world, do you see between the United States NFT Web3 space, between the South Korea web space, between the European, right? Because I like Hackatow, he's Italian, right? So I see a lot of energy in Lucas is, all these guys are like in Europe or in South Korea. That's how I kind of see it. Is that how you see it too? And why is that? What can the U.S. learn? What do they need to learn from us? Give me your like 30,000 global perspective of what's going on there.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. So, shameless plug, right? I wrote a book on NFTs published in September last year, which is a bestseller, sold over 130,000 copies in 9 months. And I think so that as a background allows me to say that I think while South Korea as a market isn't very sophisticated in terms of NFTs in and of itself, what they are very sophisticated in is how to use digital applications and make that like something real to people, i.e. not just something you click around on a computer screen, right? Which is like, if you go to the West, when we think of NFTs and we think of crypto, we think of like, you need your computer because otherwise, like, how the hell are you going to do crypto, right? Versus like in the East, it's like, no, things are much more like yin and yang. It's much more like everything needs to be woven into the everyday fabric. And so the digital and the non-digital are much more closely intertwined. So that's number one. What's interesting about the East is that they're still very much stuck in the idea of the way to make money out of digital work is through IP and IP protections, which like in the NFT world is really, really problematic, right? Like, we literally invented like CC0, which is like you give away all rights to whatever you create. Like anyone can copy and paste it, take your picture, put it on a t-shirt and sell it, and that's all fine, right? What the West can learn, however, from the East is, I think, these ideas of how to bring the digital realm into something that touches people's life in the meat space. Like through these examples that we just described, right? One is a room where you walk in and a deer comes out and interacts with you and you're like, wow, I want to buy this thing because it connects to an experience I've had, not just an experience that I consumed on a browser tab. And so, let me stop here. Does that make sense?
The first thing I thought of is that jacket that you have, the NFT, sewed into it, is that from South Korea?
It's actually not. So that one came out of MetaFactory, was the very first one. That was actually a US product.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
My second big picture thought is that there's a guy named Matthew Ball who writes all these articles about the metaverse, and he's like one of the thought leaders. And that's one of the things he kind of identifies is the metaverse is a blending or a meshing of digital and physical, right? In ways that we're not experiencing right now, I think, or taking it a step further, which the Hackatow art installations do bring to, do give me that there's a meshing. The jacket does that, so it's interesting. I don't have anything to say. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. I think to me, an oversimplification, but a clean one, I think, is if anyone talks about the metaverse and it doesn't have to do with tokens, it's not the metaverse. It goes a little bit against Matthew Ball's definition, but to me, the reason why we're interested in the metaverse is because of things like tokens. We can tokenize digital land. We can tokenize digital furniture. We can tokenize digital music. We can tokenize things like money or things like gold, right, in a digital way, as in Bitcoin, right? We can tokenize things like the US dollar, stable coins, right? We can tokenize art, things like crypto art, NFTs, right? And so the metaverse, if it does not have a token component, to me, it's not the metaverse. At least it's not why we're interested in the metaverse today, right? And so bringing tokens from digital space into what we call the meat space, extremely valuable. I think that's the bridge that people should be walking back and forth on. Not merely like, well, how do we take Roblox and is that the metaverse or not? Like, who cares?
That does bring like the whole like, okay, and this is kind of baked into a question I haven't talked about, but like, so I think about like, well, let's call them Web2 video game companies or platforms. And I think Roblox is one. I think Activision is one. Tencent, NetEase, right? They're very focused. It's still closed system. Right? It's still closed, right? So what I'm hearing is that this tokenization really is the thing that facilitates interoperability, right? Because if I can't take my Call of Duty guy and play with him in Fortnite and then go to a DAO meetup in your Soul portal, then it's all closed, right? And that is against the spirit of this whole exercise. So it's and that goes back to the question I had, kind of what regional differences, because the video game market to me, I think, is like early iteration of this thing, right? And people are using video games as a way to interact, but it's all closed and it's very regionalized, right? Like all those companies I just mentioned are very, very regionalized. The video game market is not diversified across regions. Every company, if you look at their revenues by country, is very focused or specific on a specific region, and there's not a lot of overlap. And breaking into a new market is very hard to do, right? So, is that how it's going to be here? Is there going to be the South Korea metaverse? Is it going to be the Brazil metaverse? Or do you think it's going to really be able to break through to this vision?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think the answer is yes and no. Fundamentally, the technical promise of this revolution is to create an interoperable world, right? So one of the reasons why bank wires take forever is because the sending bank and the receiving bank have their own systems, which are not really that interoperable, right? On a technical level, we want one system for all banks, not just banks, but like land registries, furniture, art, like the whole thing, right? Technically, that's where it's going. So I think you can still create tokenized things and create a closed system, but like I think you're really missing the point if you're doing that personally. Although there are some use cases where it makes sense. The second point, however, is does this mean that everyone's gonna basically coalesce in like the same space? I don't think the answer is yes, not for technical reasons, but for social reasons.
Right.
Brazilians coalescing in the same place as Koreans is pretty hard because they don't speak the same language. So it really comes down to social differences, why I think we will still see segregations within a world that is technically the same, but that might be socially still fragmented.
So there's just innate cultural differences, language barriers, for example. Like I don't know how to speak. I'm not sure if the language is called. I don't know how to speak Korean, and I'm sure plenty of Korean people don't know how to speak English, or what maybe they do a lot more. I don't know, right? So that is going to create some barriers, but the underlying infrastructure architecture is there. I'm going to go for a second to the chat. Shout out to my mom again. My mom is here. Kaylee she wanted to ask you. She's the #1 fan. She asked you. Can you name the title of your book again? What's the name of the book?
Oh, it's literally called NFT Revolution. Unfortunately, it's not yet in English. It's only in Korean. Was just translated into Taiwanese and Chinese, but it's slated to be published in English. I'll share.
Are you the author?
Once it is.
Are you and Scott? Or who's the author?
That's correct. It's Scott, me, and a woman called Sora Song, who was a PhD student a year underneath me in our Institute PhD program. She's American.
And you sold 100,000 copies of that book, right?
130,000 copies in 9 months.
That's not too shabby. Good job. Congratulations. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Matt, what do you think? You want to transition? You want to do a little transition?
Yeah, I want to get to the project. Was speaking with Rolf earlier, and so we think the reveal might be within 24 hours. Is that fair, Rolf? Okay.
That is fair. In fact, I just received a notification that it's almost done, actually. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I will be sharing the full version of that second video a show or two ago. So that'll sort of sync with the full reveal of the characters, which we're expecting the common and the rares to reveal. The historic, legendary one-of-ones will take time, right? And so those will not reveal. I think the art is still being worked on, and obviously we want to do it right. So we'll have some patience there. One question going back to doing it right and wrong, JP and I were thinking about sort of like a post-mortem on what we've done so far. What, in your mind, what do you think we've done right with the project so far? And what do you think could have used some improvement, or where do you think we could still make a big difference in making this a success as a project as a whole?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm biased. I think we did a great job so far. What we did is just replicate like any kind of PFP. I think we generated a type of PFP that you don't see a lot. And the main difference is the following. If you look at most NFT PFPs today, they're mostly some type of animal in either a pixelated form or some kind of like very basic animated form. There are plenty of those. They are, even this this past week, there's a few that popped up and they've generated a whole bunch of buzz. I think that the art itself, what we've tried here, is to really push the boundaries of what the technology can do. So the technology that we've used a lot is one called Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine 5 is the technology that was used to generate the latest Matrix. Quite aside from what you think of the movie, the visuals are pretty stunning, right? What we're experiencing in quite outside of crypto is a technological revolution where you're able to generate worlds like the Matrix without having to spend $50 million. There's literally 100x improvement right now to where you only have to spend like $500,000. And I think in 2-3 years, you only spend 50K and you need only like 2-3 people to do that. What we've done here is we've generated a series of avatars that are supposed to be photorealistic. Like they don't really look like humans quite yet, but we've tried to make them as real as possible. And so, we had literally like a person just there for the hair. They were working for several days just to design the hair, right? There's another person who's just there to design the face. Another person just designed the accessories. And so what we have is like really trying to generate something that sets out a world where we have a main character. We have now 5 other characters that will make up the rare ones. And then the legendary ones will be 20 unique characters, right? And so what I think the next step would be, or something that could be really interesting, want to lead into it, is to generate a story around these characters. Right. So I think, in fact, most NFT PFPs need that. So if you have the CryptoPunks or the Bored Apes, like you have basically 10,000 different characters, but like what do you do with them? Like who are these characters? Like right now, it's just like, well, they cost 100 ETH, then like you have your own one, and like it's a flex and it's like a status symbol, like I don't know, a Ferrari or something. But like, is that where it ends, or can we go deeper, right?
Yeah.
And I think that might be something that we could lean into, whether that be something as simple as a coffee book, whether that be something like, eventually that turns into like a TV series and all these kinds of things, or like a manga or webtoon, which is really big in Korea and the East. Like building stories into NFT PFPs is, I think, where the next 2 years are going to go for the most successful PFPs in general.
Whose job is it to build the story? Is it the project's job? Is it the person who owns the job, or owns the? Is it if there's 10,000 Bored Apes, is it every person's individual? There was the whole thing about Seth Green's going to make a TV show about his character or whatever, and they got stolen. Whatever. Is it the person's job, or is it the community's job?
So, such an interesting question. So I don't know whose job it is, but I can tell you that it used to be the job of only one person, and there was no way around that. It used to be the script writer, right? And then it used to be modified a little bit because of the actors, but it was really the script, right? Now, for the first time, we had the option of having a community co-determine the story. The question is to which degree, because it's just like having 10 cooks in the kitchen. Like at some point, it just becomes a mess, right?
Yeah.
So the question is like, well, maybe you have one cook for the dessert, one cook for the appetizer, and one cook for the main plate. Like you can dice it like this a little bit. You can also say maybe people who own the character are the only ones who can then make their voices heard about certain forks in the story. So think about it like this: when you're consuming a TV episode every week, that releases one episode every week, what about if after each episode, the biggest fans of that TV series get to vote on like which character will die? And that's the only thing they can vote on. And the reason why they can vote on that is because they own an NFT. They have skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They pay money, and they're demonstrably fans of that TV series. And so what you have is you have a story which has many kind of forks in the road. And the scriptwriter can say, look, there are like these 10 forks in the road of my script, and I'm willing to let the community say where the story goes in each fork. That's another way of bringing in the community. Yeah. Or you could go completely decentralized and say, only people who own a character in our story are able to then freely generate stories by themselves. So maybe there's somebody who like does comic-like stuff, and he can create comics if he owns like a VanEck NFT. Or maybe there's like a TV director who would love to make some kind of TV series out of the Hammy character, and he can go off and do that, but only if he owns it, right? Maybe there's a fashion designer who's like, my God, I think we got to print these things out or something, right? And like he generates this really cool 100 limited edition Hammy jackets with NFC chips inside that we drop NFTs, right? So the design space, meaning the options that we have, are really wide. Unlike before, we have many more options. Which option is the right ones, we don't know, but we'll have some fun.
Yeah, and I think I want the community listening to know that we want your feedback, right? I mean, again, we have somewhat of a roadmap in place, but it's a community NFT. You have a voice. We want to hear your suggestions and feedback. So those are really good ideas, Rolf. How about moving to the trivia portion, JP? And I do want to say I want to do 2 trivia questions. So I'm going to do a layup question first for any non-VanEck employees watching. So we want new community members, right? So this one should be a layup. What are the first names of the last 2 guests we had on the Web3 TEA show? And if whoever gets it first,
I don't think this should be closed to VanEckers. I think any VanEcker who can answer that should.
That's fine. I mean, that's fine.
We need any hardcore fan we can get. Who are our last 2 guests? Yeah, good question. That's funny. A little self.
So put it in the chat, and then again, the winners today. If you were the first one, you'll send an email to nft@vaneck.com, and I'll send you the form for the sign up.
And what's good about this is there's only one up right now because the last week's hasn't been put up. So if you can go on our the channel page and see who was this show number 2, and but you don't know number 3 because it's not up. If you weren't watching last week, you're SOL as they say in the biz.
And then Rolf, how about you give yours, and we'll give them a few moments to try to answer.
Yeah, we get a side rant. It hasn't been too bad today, but in the last couple of lives, people are in the chat. I want an NFT. I want an NFT. I want an NFT. I want an NFT. And it's like, okay, well, answer the trivia question, right? Like we've given them a couple away. Mike Smith, close but no cigar. You're almost there.
You could try again.
You could try again, and you could also just go to the. Last week just went live. The VanEck production studio is live in the chat. So all you have to do is go to the channel page and give us the first name of the last 2 guests. And if you do that, then you'll win. This is kind of sad.
That's why I was trying to move on to Rolf's question.
All right, let's go to Rolf's question.
Keep it going.
If they can't answer this, I don't know if they're going to be able to answer Rolf's question.
All right, so this is the question. NFTs really took off at the end of 2020. There was a artist who sold NFTs in late 2020, and on that weekend is when I think we switched from NFTs being a crypto thing to NFTs becoming a mainstream thing. You may know the artist's name, but I will not mention that because then I think it's too easy. What I want to know is the date on which that artist sold the NFTs, such that the sale of those NFTs basically started when I think NFTs becoming mainstream.
Cool.
I know that date by heart. Because that's
essentially who's the artist that blew the top off the NFT market and made it say, whoa, right? That's what you're asking. Who did it?
That's what I'm asking. End of 2000.
And we're not even wanting the real name. We don't even want the real name. We want his NFT name. Aximus. I remember you from last week, Aximus. Again, you guys can just go on to we got like 4 minutes left. Are we going to withdraw the trivia questions? I mean, I feel like I'm about to.
We're going to give them the 4 minutes. Do some closing comments.
My
JP,
closing comments are, okay.
And lightning round. We got to do lightning round for Rolf.
I didn't come up with a lightning round. Okay.
Where are the next 4 countries that you're going to, if you know them yet? Because I don't know how.
I do. So I'm in Singapore now. I'm going to Korea in 90 minutes. Then I will be in Germany. Then I will be in Tokyo. And then I will be in Indonesia.
And do you have like, I'm assuming you've been to these spots a couple times. Do you have like your go-to restaurant, bar, your favorite place when you head there?
I do. In fact, the place I miss the most in Korea right now is a Korean barbecue place that's really small. There's only 8 seats. I know the owner. In fact, it's so good I mostly go there alone.
Nice.
It's kind of weird, probably, but yeah.
Okay, we got a winner. John Herson. He won. Amazing. Bayun and Siegel. He gave us the last names. Considering the depth of the replies, I'm gonna go ahead and say we're gonna accept that. Yes, there's no cat. This is not cash. This is an NFT that you cannot buy. You cannot buy a seller list. We can't be joking around like that in the chat. We're already pushing the envelope. Black Sabbath with Dio. I almost played some Black Sabbath to open it up. Thank you for John Herson. Yeah. Nobody's gotten the Korean, the Rolf question right. Who was the artist that blew off the top of the NFT market? What was the date, Rolf, that you got tattooed, on a place you wouldn't be able to show us right now?
Well, initially I was going to ask about the date, but that was December 12th, 2020. The 12/12/2020 was when a really major sell happened on Nifty Gateway. I guess we're looking for the name of the artist now.
27 people can't do it, man. This is crazy. This is crazy. All right, my closing thoughts.
I'm mostly disappointed in the VanEck crowd. Can't figure this out.
I love you guys for being here. I really do love the people for watching and stuff. 28 people, 27 people. But I'm just kind of, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. All right, Kevin Dezoy. I don't know how to say that last name. Beeple. Kevin Dezoy. Beeple. Good job. All right, so
NFT at VanEck.com.
Email us, Kevin and John, NFT at VanEck.com. Screenshot your username or something like that, and we'll send you a form that you have to fill out, and then we'll fold you into the next reveal. Come to think of it, they're gonna get the revealed NFT though, right? Because the NFTs are revealing tomorrow, so we're not sending the pre-reveal out. They're just gonna get it, right?
They're just gonna get the revealed image.
Now we got a bunch of people saying people. All right, guys, you guys lost. Sorry. We can't all be winners. We can't all be winners, right? There's no
next week or the next one. You just be listening. Yeah. We'll have more of these.
Okay, my closing thoughts are really crazy conversation, Rolf. That's why I like talking to you, is because you're credentialed, you're well credentialed, so I trust that what you're saying is true. But very interesting, and I love how you've gone from PhD academia, philosophical research on this, how organizations are structured and what that means, and it's led directly into this new cutting-edge Web3 ecosystem, and it's very exciting. And I want to personally thank you for, I think, a really great job on the NFT. And this goes to Scott too. Scott's, we haven't talked about Scott. Scott is Rolf's partner at NUMOMO. Scott, you've done a great job, and I really appreciate you guys both. Thank you very much. Bartlett, why don't you got any Jerry Springer final thoughts, and then we'll let Rolf have the final.
Honestly, I just love the stories that you shared today. I hope we could have you on again at some point, Rolf. So thank you, and for your help with the project, obviously.
Yeah, Rolf. So. Final thoughts, Jerry Springer style. What do you got?
Thank you for having me. Lots of fun. I think this is just the beginning. So this is there's a long road, and I think the best part about it is the journey.
I agree. Thank you. See, another one in the chat. Do you still have a chance to get an NFT? Come on, guys. Come on. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you for your time.